Let's talk about signals. Let's talk about audio signal.
The album from Rush?
No. Well, that we could spend a whole lifetime. But let's talk about audio signals and sort of why this whole concept of signal to noise ratio matters. Because for most people, they don't really give two cents about that. You know, they're just sort of like, I don't know. I went for guitar players. Like this was definitely my world. I'm sure you guys were similar. You buy a new guitar, and you bought a little amp. And what's the first thing that you do? You get the cheapest cord that you can buy.
Because I already spent all my money on the amp and the guitar.
Exactly.
Sweet signal, smooth signal, 2-inch copper rods, cross-braided, educated, no signal loss. Earworm, stuck in my mind, can't get it out this time.
So you're like, okay, and you go get the $10 Wonder that breaks probably by the end of the week. You know, at home, it starts shorting out and you're getting all this RF and you're getting noise and everything else like that. And then your beautiful guitar through your beautiful amp sounds not so good.
And that poor Guitar Center employee that sold it to you, that had to listen to you tell him exactly what you wanted, had to figure it out. And then he sold you the amp and the guitar and he's like, all right, I'm going to sell it for this much. And then he's like, you know, you need a cable too. Like, right. Feels like he's extorting you at that point.
Totally, yeah. You're like, fuck you, buddy.
Yeah. Oh, you know, you're going to need a strap. You're going to need picks. You're going to need. It's like,
totally right. And how many of us remember? I mean, I do. I remember if I didn't have a guitar cord when I was a kid, I did not go to a music store. I could just as easily go to Radio Shack, and buy one of those long, you know, super spiraled ones,
or like the clear colored ones that you could see through.
Yes,
Ooh.
Totally. Those were very sexy.
Woof.
Right, it's a big woof.
No, they look good.
They look good.
They look cool.
They looked
at
cool.
the time, but they did not.
They did not
sound good.
They did not sound cool.
Welcome to Earworm episode 17. I'm Patrick Cloud.
I'm Brian Clark.
And today we have a very special guest. He's an artist. He's a musician. He's an entrepreneur. He's an author. He's a world traveler.
Yeah.
And his name is Dariush Rad. Dariush, thanks for being here.
Gentlemen, thanks for having me.
Our pleasure. He is Greg number 4 for
Greg number 4.
Gregarious personality. And we're honored to have you here. Dariush is one of the few people in the world that is an expert on signal-to-noise ratio, specifically because of a technology that he has. But we're going to lead up to that by just kind of posing this question of when you have signal-to-noise ratio, whenever you make a recording, whenever you're doing anything, you spend so much money on buying big consoles, big monitors, big expensive microphones, huge synthesizers, amps, guitars, all the instruments, right? And you get everything together and everybody's making this, they're showing up to make a great record. And then you get really shitty cable. Mm-hmm. And what ends up happening is that all of that bandwidth gets collapsed. And you have a higher signal-to-noise ratio. That's just the start of it. I just want to kind of prep people for that by saying that the next time that you want to – now, we're not saying go snake oil like you're going to go buy a power cable that's, you know, $1,000 a foot.
Right.
There's a law of diminishing return. And to be fair, there are people that are in this business, especially in the hi-fi audio, like if you're into stereos and other things in the hi-fi realm, where people want to charge you $1,000 a foot for certain types of cable.
Well, they'll also tell you that you need to change your entire fuse box at your house. It's a real thing.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
Because you've got 100 items spaced out in 3,000 square feet that are going to need to be plugged in. It's just the most preposterous thing. And at the other side of the wall, it's Romex. It's just your standard Home Depot cable that you're going to be buying that's going to run it. You know what I'm saying? Right. So it's like, at what point do you do that? Now, there is conditioned energy in the sense of, like, you know, the Equitech power and stuff like that. So you can power condition to get it stable. And
I think that's what I was referring to, where they install it at the source of all the power for the studio.
Well,
Equitech makes those.
The Equitech makes those, yeah. But they basically kind of do what Furman does, where they condition for voltage spikes.
Right.
Because here's the thing:
they take the ghosts out of the walls.
Yeah.
They really need it in New Orleans.
Oh.
Like when they build a studio in New Orleans, it's like you have to do it.
I think we need to make sure that when people have circuitry that they spend money on, that given the fact that we have dirty power, you need to have the cleanest cable possible. And I mean that in the sense of like the purity of what you have. And most of the stuff that we buy isn't. Would you agree with that? or how would you how do you crack this egg on tone and signal to noise ratio and what's important? And if you're a guitar player that just bought their very first Les Paul and their very first, Marshall or whatever combo amp or whatever, how do you get this culture to kind of go, now there's one little tiny piece of the puzzle and it's getting a really good cable. And is it audible? Now, we know,
so. Yeah.
we know. But,
Absolutely.
you can't, it's one of those things you lead the horse to water and you let them have the experience. How do you crack that?
Well, personally, after 17 years of pushing this rock up the hill, and it was certainly nothing I knew anything about, right? And I think to best describe what you're describing, I call it a cultural barrier. There's a distinct cultural barrier because there has not been any major advent in standard quarter-inch cable development since Leo Fender reached up and took an old phone line switcher and said, hey, that'll work.
Right.
So there just has not been any major advent, right? And so it's been easy for all of us for all these years to underappreciate how critical signal is. It's everything, right? I mean, the vibration, and I don't want to get too esoteric too early, but the electrochemical
We'll ramp into the
highly esoteric. I'll keep it just at the time that high impedance place. Let's just say a guitar. That high impedance place in the pickup where the signal is most likely to get corrupted is where it needs to most be preserved.
At the pickup level. At source.
At the microphone.
Underneath the string. You've got your poles, you've got your wraps.
Just the minute it becomes the signal that you hope to amplify.
Okay, so as it leaves the guitar, as it's ready to leave the guitar, once the actual quarter-inch cable connects to the body of the guitar, that's the spot where okay, here we go.
Yeah, well, I mean, we take it even a step further at Asterope by offering our internal wiring solutions.
Yeah, I mean, that's right at the birth of the signal.
Now, that's the birth of the signal, right?
Okay.
Or even more if we were to start, creating wind wire. But regardless, you're exactly right. It's there at that place where the signal's most likely going to get bombarded with RF, corrupted, bumped around, and that is not a good thing. Right?
So it's coming from the heart of the musician, the heart and soul of the musician, and you're trying to preserve that.
Amen.
And make sure that translation.
That's it, man. I mean, you think about where that spark of inspiration comes from, it's electrochemical. But ultimately, it's electromagnetic.
Right. It gets transduced.
It is.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
then that energy is coming out the tip of your fingers. You want to preserve that. And you grab an instrument, whether it's a scalpel or a guitar or a paintbrush or a camera or whatever it is, there's real energy there. And it really deserves to be preserved and for the integrity of the intention and the spirit behind that expression to be preserved. These precious little data packets that reside inside of what? Electrons are being beat to hell along their conductive paths. They're having to arc their way over what are called domains. And in a situation with cable and wire, most often it's copper is a conductive material. But the copper does not exist in like a substrate, like a slab of marble. It exists in what are called domains or packets. And there are gaps in between the domains. So I think of like Satio tile floor, which leads to another analogy I can give. A Satio tile floor.
I don't know what that is. What does that mean, a Satio tile floor?
Well, we grew up in Mexico. We grew up in Texas. Everybody had Satio tile, the big orange, big tile.
Oh, okay.
Right?
Yeah.
Right.
Highly porous.
Just sections. Separated by gaps.
Got you. Okay.
Right?
All right.
A tile floor.
A tile floor.
But it's not a smooth tile. It's a Satio tile floor.
So it's porous. It's got a little
It's
texture
got bumps
to it.
and stuff to it.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Can we
And
describe the tiles more?
Yeah. So
What color were they?
The tiles are
They were baked in a oven.
He said he didn't know what a
Terracotta?
Satio. I would think he would know what a Satio tile floor
Dude,
is.
you were totally went, I was like,
If you're on what distorted
Yeah.
medium versus a smooth medium, right? So the copper itself by nature is distorted. And the electrons are having to arc their way from domain to domain.
And
Now,
just
arcing, if we all remember Young Frankenstein,
Yeah.
it's noisy and it's ugly stuff.
The
And it's
Tesla coil thing.
absolutely aggravating and compromising the integrity of what?
Right.
it's just
intention.
disrupting
Yeah.
the signal between.
It's distorting, disrupting, canceling, screwing it up completely. Why are we talking about tiles? Because we're describing the fact that copper does not exist as a substrate, that it exists in domains and packets. Now, if the top of the floor, I'm talking about the Mexican tile.
I do.
that
I do. I
everybody
just
had,
didn't know
right?
what that was called. If
We're
you
just
just would
gonna
have said
call it-
Mexican tile, I would have been.
Everything. Damn it,
We'll put a
Brian.
graphic
How
up.
can you-
We'll put a graphic.
Let's stop the camera. I actually knew something that Brian Clark did not. That's a celebration. Can we?
Wait.
Oh,
get
don't
it-
worry. This is all getting recorded.
Hey, just wait
brother.
another 5 minutes because there's going to be more.
Yeah,
There's
that's-
coming.
Say Mexican tile. You take a tennis ball and you gently roll it on a Latino tile floor.
Yes.
What's going to happen to the tennis ball?
It's gonna go
Thank you.
path of least resistance.
And if it's
Yeah.
got yumminess in it, what's going to happen? It's going to get banged up and beat up.
Right.
Right. So one of the things we've learned to do is heal the gaps between the tile. Right.
Yeah.
To heal the gaps so that you have more of a substrate. Right now, if you take that same tennis ball and you go to just a polished marble floor and you gently roll it, what happens?
Oh, it's going to be amazing.
And it skates.
Yeah.
It's fast.
Yeah. Very little resistance
And the integrity of what's in there, it's preserved along the conductive path.
for
Right,
longer
'cause it's
distances.
For longer distances, faster.
Yeah. So, and when you say we're talking about Asterope, which we haven't sort of done, but what you do so magically and what Asterope does so magically, and I can say this as an endorsee, non-paid, but and I would never want to be paid because I believe in the product so much, but. It doesn't matter what it is. It doesn't matter whether it's what gauge of Asterope it is. It doesn't matter what use you're putting it in, whether it's a speaker interconnect, whether it's from a console to your monitors. It doesn't matter whether it's a microphone cable, guitar cable, synth cable, bass cable. It doesn't matter. I can tell you from personal experience, and I can just encourage you to have your own experience. You will hear a difference. And it will be a difference that will allow you, if you play an instrument, you will become, at least this is my experience, you become more connected with the nuances that cheaper cable never gave. Monster Cable, Mogami, George L's, you put them all up to that, and I have a deeper connection with my instrument and my touch to the strings or whatever it is that I'm trying to manipulate with this cable.
I totally agree. You know, Brian, and Dariush knows I've told this story 1,000 times, I think, is that I just got one instrument cable from Dariush. I think I got it from you first. And I went home and I changed the cable that I had my guitar to the amp to. That's it. And it was like, wow, if they could put this in a pedal, I'd pay a lot of money for this. You know, it's like that's how kind of a cool thing it is. Like there are people who spend thousands of dollars to clean up their signal when really they just might need to replace their cable.
Yeah.
And that blew my mind. And then when we were at Ocean Way and listening to the Alison Krauss track through the different iterations and being able every step of the way, you could hear more of her breath and more of her lips and more of her cheeks and her bones like moving and hearing that. And then the sound of the fingers on the guitar, like just the presence of that sound that just kept being enunciated further because it was getting more to the natural sound of the music in general. So those are two things I just like have totally floored me. And I'm telling everybody about this stuff.
Thank you, brother.
Yeah.
It's exciting, and those are great descriptions. I mean, it's like it's a resolution. It's a function of resolution, right? Because the data in the electron the original data is preserved better along longer lengths as well. I've got a 50-foot Asterope I'll put up against anybody's 10-foot. That's a standing offer, and we'll smoke them, and I'll,
Yeah.
So length is dealt with, transients are dealt with, but it's that beautiful thing you're describing, where the presence and the resonance and the resolution, just truly, the resolution is so much higher.
Things you don't even realize that you lose.
I mean,
you really just don't until you have it gained back.
So what I've come to believe is that when you're able to maintain the integrity of the intention, of that electromagnetic pulse, of the data, and it arrives where it needs to go.
Right.
unimpeded, that that what the end result is that it's absolutely so phase coherent that as those vibrations move into the room, they're not canceling each other out because the gear has got in the way. And I'll say this out loud and then you guys can chew on this. I have come to believe without question, not only in audio but also in aerospace, that every piece of gear is over-engineered to try and salvage a corrupted signal that will never be salvaged. And how do we do that? When we sit there in front of our stereos when we're in high school or college, man, we get it all set up, we put it on the record, and the first thing we do is what? Check it out. We tweak the bass and treble. We start adding noise to do what? To simulate phase.
Right.
To simulate phase. And it's a little different for everyone where that sweet spot is. Right?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, we hear it a little bit differently. Yeah.
But when you, like you said, when you get everything out of the way and you just really experience the sound of what your sound, of your instrument, of your mic, of your mix, gosh, man, it's like you don't need all that extra heat, all that extra amplification, all that extra modulation to try and correct the distorted or the corrupted signal.
I think it's important.
Compromised.
Case in point, I don't know if I know we've all experienced this, and I'm sure our audience has too, especially the folks that are playing live. There's this moment where you go in, you do sound check, and you're like, yeah, man, like you do sound check, and you're like, yeah, everything sounds good. Like my tone is happening, right? Nothing changes. Nobody went, no one popped a string and had to put a new set strings on, or you didn't lose your cable or whatever. And then all of a sudden, you get back on stage and you start playing again and you're like, wait a minute, my tone's different. And the audience isn't even fully in their seats yet, right? So it's not like, oh, it's because it's a full house and it's changed. I'm just talking about your tone is different. Like the way you're interacting with your instrument is different. What is that caused from? And the reality is that a lot of cities have dirty power. And depending upon the demands that it has on the grid, you get to this point where you get a spike or, the grid's pushing out so much stuff that if your amp is basically in a sweet spot at, say, 120, you could be drawing current from the wall, could be at 123, or it could be whatever, right?
That's really interesting. I just think of like, you're at a venue and they turn on all the popcorn makers and all the hot dog machines. And all of a sudden, the guitar player sounds different.
Yeah,
it's just it's a funny concept.
It's absolutely 100% true. But it's absolutely 100% true because I didn't realize this, and I can never figure it out for much longer than I'm comfortable admitting. And basically, I got to the point where I carry a variac around and a voltage meter. And what I would do is I would get on stage and I would measure the voltage, and then I would set, because my amps generally don't run at 120. I like them sagged a little bit, or like a 117. Anyway. For certain ones.
Nerd.
I know, right? But hey, welcome to Earworm.
Yeah, right.
So, but like when you do that, and so then I would go in and I would adjust the voltage to get it to 117, right? And then I would leave, and then I would come back, and after maybe the warm-up band is gone or whatever, or you're the warm-up band, whatever, you get back up on stage, and I would check my meter again, and more often than not, I would have to make a slight adjustment.
Interesting. Because
it had already changed. And in Nashville, it's very much that way.
Right.
So, and I had a guy come up and was like, hey man, what are you measuring all this stuff at the wall? Do you have a variac? And I went, yeah, it's sitting on top of my amp. And he's like, oh, you're legit then.
So I also think that's kind of odd that somebody will spend, $100,000 on a vintage Les Paul.
Or more.
And then have a $30 cable.
Yeah.
That just totally wrecks the intended nature of a PAF, right? Like,
yeah.
So,
yeah.
I thought
what's an analogy for like cars? It would be like if you bought, a super exotic
Tires, maybe?
one of six. Yeah,
tires.
it'd be like, right? So it'd be like, or wheels, like you just put on the cheapest wheels with the cheapest hubcaps, like, but you had a Bugatti Chiron or something like that. That's a, $7 million car.
Right.
Like, it makes no sense.
Yeah, put Chinese tires on it.
Yeah.
And it starts just shaking its way down the highway.
Little go-kart tires.
And it doesn't even have to be a high-end instrument, because I can tell you guys it will take a much lesser engineered instrument. It'll take a cheap guitar and make it sound amazing.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
Because there's so much yumminess in there that's just getting quashed by a technology. And to use the word, if I could, that you're using, evolutionary. I absolutely believe that this stuff is evolutionary. Most technologies are built in an evolutionary way. Every now and then something is revolutionary. And so it's that cultural barrier. Like, oh, come on, could it be?
Right.
And sadly for some things, you just have to experience them. Somebody can describe, an amazing film or an amazing food or an amazing, moment or location, and some things just have to be experienced. You can hear about it, but I think you're right, Brian. I think there is such a cultural barrier because there has not been any major advent in this realm. I don't want to not say ever because there are some fine cable manufacturers out there that I respect tremendously, but I think overall it is the way understated component in the signal path. And like you said, whether can't you spend so much money on your guitar, your amp, not to mention how much of your life you pour into honing your craft, and then you trust the most precious component in the entire expression.
Yeah.
Right.
The data, the
interconnect.
expression, the electromagnetic reflection of your heart to anything inferior, then it's sad. But
I think it's funny that you said there hasn't been like these moments, but I can tell you that anybody that uses Asterope does think that it is an advent in technology. They know that it is, and that's what it is. It's a matter of getting people to hear it. I want to go back to the technology for a second because something that I learned from you that I did not know before is about the directionality of the way that the electrons behave. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, it's cool. And there's so many people go, oh, that's BS. It's not. It's not.
Right. I think a lot of people are going to say that.
Yeah.
They're like, oh, how does an electron know which way to flow? Like one end is just as good as the other. Why don't they say, this is the forward end and the back end?
And naturally, it will. I mean, you can.
Right.
You
need to know about the nature of
flow
subatomic.
both ways, up and down. But it is. It's a physics thing, and that's been another thing I think for us, regardless over all these years, and really, really brilliant engineers and brilliant techs and brilliant OEMs. But the minute they plug it in, they're just like, wow, wait a minute. So on the directionality thing, a couple of things. When you take a conductive material, in our case copper, and it's liquid and it's in a vat, and you're pulling it, in our case, extremely very high-stranded solution, right? Most of our competitors have strands, and we have many strands. But when you pull that, the direction that you're pulling the conductive material into that fine strand of wire, there's a crystalline structure at a molecular level, and that crystalline structure tends to want to line a certain way, right?
In the direction it's being pulled.
In the direction it's being pulled. So not to say that it can't go the other way, but there's just a tendency that would, I believe, if we think of it magnetically, right, or if you were to think about nonlinear magnetics or standard magnetics, there's just an energetic tendency. We know what we're talking about when it rains and static changes and stuff. So that's part of it. And then, and I'll circle back on that one. We also tie the shield. We have a heavy-duty, like 98% cross-braided shield, not a spiral shield. If you have a spiral shield, and I do that, what happens? Everything here is getting bathed by
RF,
whatever's in the room, EMR.
Yeah.
So it's cross-braided like a finger trap. And we tie the shield on the load end or the outbound end or the amp end, right? You have source and load. Why would we do that? Because if it's picking up any noise, or any malevolent frequencies, you want to dump them at the amp. You don't want to dump it back into the
your instrument,
right? Where that signal is so frail. So that's real, right? So it's called telescopic grounding, and we tie our shield telescopically. And then I've got a brother who is an engineer at Boeing. He just retired, and we were talking about this, the first component, right, which is just the crystalline structure. And he said, Dariush, think about this. We've both grown up in Ruidoso, up in the mountains. I said, you remember in the winter when the river would freeze? I said, yeah. He said, and this is another thing. If we just think the whole day about electricity and water, we're going to be really good, right? Because we're talking about water moving through a pipe and all the different things in the pipe that can affect the flow from contaminants to laminar flow to all these different things that can actually affect the fluidity of the flow. But he said, okay, look, Dariush, so the current in the river, when it's moving down an icy stream, if you get really close and look at all that ice and the structure that it's containing the energy, you'll notice the crystals in the ice starting to follow the current, right? So hi-fi guys will take their wire, and it won't be good wire to them until they've burned it in for 100 or 200 hours, and it's legit. No, and it's legit. And
That's amazing.
Yeah, no, and it's part of, look, that's where our wire was originally developed, was for hi-fi, right? And those guys try to beat that thing, and you need a lot of money to try to get people to get it, and it's a noisy neighborhood. And ironically, 2 or 3 of the absolute best players in that field, Jenna Labs and Terra Labs and all these guys, they're all coming out of aerospace. So my story's been kind of weirdly going the
into
other way.
aerospace.
Yeah. But they get it. And it has little settle on. Those guys are like weaving their conductors and stuff at a certain distance because of capacitance in the it gets affected. And it's real science. We've just got our formula and I just didn't want to play in that field. And because I'm a musician and all my best friends are artists and brothers, I wanted them to experience and them to have it. So that's that explains. Does that help with the directionality?
It does, yeah. It actually explains it quite well. And you actually mentioned, going into aerospace, and I know that's been a big part of your journey this year. And I think as a musician, and Brian, we love the top end of nerdery, right? Like from Star Wars to
Did you hear that?
Sampling TC Electronics 25-year-old fireworks things to get sounds.
Yep.
We like technology. It's really interesting to us. And when I found out that there's a studio cable, guitar cable that I already love that is going into aerospace, I feel like that's something that should be shouted from the mountains. I think a lot of musicians, especially studio people, really love the fact that something's high technology, right? Because it tells them that they're thinking about us too, right? So what was the impetus for you wanting to take that side of the division and start showing it to people?
Well, before I go into that, I honestly want to say thank you, because the timing on our meeting and getting together on this has been serendipitous on that front specifically. Because when I first, honestly, what took me into that? Me wanting to get the hell out of the music business. I had just wrapped up a 5-year stint with Larry Fishman as my distributor, who is an absolute best friend, brother, mentor, uncle, big brother, whatever. I mean, Larry's a cat. He's one of the godfathers of the MI industry, sharp as hell. He's a guy that would spend half his day at MIT and the other half at Berkeley, And so talk about music and science and really having a head and just a good business head and all.
And for those folks who aren't in guitar land or acoustic guitar land, Fishman is one of the juggernauts of this industry that makes all kinds of products for acoustic guitars to be amplified.
I mean, I just remember the pickups were always like
Right.
the acoustic
those
pickups were
and
like
and a lot
that
of the
was standard.
prog guys like Polyphia and those guys, they're
Those guys are all
using
using Fluence now,
Fluence pickups,
which is a solid state. It's not coil wound, which is really
and it's a
fascinating.
different sound.
Totally.
It is a different
Totally.
sound.
And then they've obviously dipped into other things too, like effect processing and modeling and stuff like that for acoustic guitars. But
Yep.
Mostly an
PAs
acoustic
and stuff.
instrument, like
Stuff and acoustic amps and
very
stuff.
cool. Violins and
Larry's
cello. I
had
mean, everything.
Yeah.
He's had a great career, continues to, and just develops a lot of super cool stuff. And we had a mutual friend, Bill Vorndick, who was one of the quintessential acoustic recording engineers and probably, I would say, one of the most loving educator mentors. If anybody carried the mentor spirit in Nashville and beyond, it was Bill Vorndick. But if it was being recorded and it was acoustic, it was Alison Krauss or, Charlie Hayden or Mumford and Sons. He did all the Bella Fleck records. I mean, Bill was a cat, and we had a mutual friend. And the first time he heard it, he was just like, Dariush, Larry Fishman needs to hear this. And I'm like, oh, that'd be cool. So about 2-3 months later, I get a call, and it's like, hey, D, it's Larry Fishman. And I'm like, oh, come on. He's like, no, D, it's Larry. And I'm like, well, I guess Bill got through to him. Bill sends me a cable, And I'm sitting on this thing for like 3 months. I said, yeah, I did too, man. It was like, come on, it's freaking cable, you know?
Yeah.
Literally 3 months before I ever plugged the prototype I had been given it. And he said, Christ, man, I was in my lab till 6 in the morning. I can just hold this shit over a piece of gear and it sounds better. You know? God bless Larry, who to this day says Asterope is the most disruptive technology in the entire industry because it just makes everything sound good. And it's super cool because it's an ubiquitous product. You know, it's not like just guitars or just bass or just studio or just stage.
Right.
Everything is connected with cable, and I don't even like to use the word, and hopefully one day everything will be connected with Asterope, which is different. And we have got to find ways to differentiate ourselves because of that cultural barrier. But
And well, in car stereo, like these competitive, car stereo thing, and the guy who's won the world championships
Brian just got back, yeah.
Right?
How did you do? I saw him
He
before
was
that.
second by half a point.
Oh, my
And he
goodness.
said, Dariush, sometimes it's political because it's just the two of us now. We keep winning, so it goes back and forth.
But he's won it multiple times,
yeah,
and
yeah.
he's wiring these juggernaut systems
Oh, God, yeah.
of car stereo that have like I don't know how many hundreds and hundreds of watts of
Oh, yeah.
but amplification with Asterope for high-end
Yeah.
car stereo.
He was like in Class C when we met. He was a tech out at Skyway, Brian Gill. He's a sweetheart of a guy. So Brian's in like Class 3, and we put some wire, just like a couple of runs to maybe one set of speakers, and he went into the Class A. And he said, Dariush, I jumped 2 classes. And everybody said, what did you do? And he's really sweet about it. He opened the back. He's got a Asterope logo on the back of his thing. I said, well, let's put some more in there. And he hopped up on the podium. Now in the first class, he's on the podium. And came back, and I'm like, well, there's only one thing we should buy wire your sub. So I put the 16 gauge on his sub. He went back, and he's just like boom, 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 boom. He keeps winning because, guys, we live in an electric universe. And it's all phase, and it's all energy. And if we can find a way to take that spark and amplify it.
How do we get back to spaceships?
You're a good man. I'm sorry. Thank God somebody in here is not as ADD as I am. So
When are you
I
going
had
in TIE
the
fighters?
the Larry Fishman thing. It was a long, hard push, right? And just guys, just business. Being a business owner is not always like, oh, you own a business. Can we have free this and that? It's hard, man.
It's a lot of that though.
So he takes me to a meeting with a guy from the NSA. He said, you need to pivot. You need to find another application for this technology. He said, if this stuff can do what I hear it does, and you could even add a 2 or 3% performance bump. He said, the whole world is made out of wire. And when you add a 2 or 3% efficiency with this technology to
At scale.
at scale to any number of
Massive.
other industries. At that time, I happened to have a dear brother as an engineer at Boeing. I had another brother that I had met at NAM who was a PhD commander at Miramar, which is where Top Gun, all that stuff is at. Super cool guy, still a brother, Ellis. And I had just met a pilot. And it was so funny because I'd met these guys. They were all musicians. They were all into music, but they're all super high-level pilot, like Apache or Boeing test pilots, an engineer at Boeing, Ellis. And to me, those were signs. I'm like, aerospace. That's where we need to go because I find myself now surrounded with all these cats in aerospace, and it's exciting and cool. Okay, so I went back out to West Texas and bless my partners, they said they understood. They knew how hard we were working and the momentum we had made, but they understood the argument, which is we need to find another place to play. And so we ended up developing what would be considered an avionics suite, which is not more like a high voltage, but a low voltage suite, starting with 16 gauge, 18, 20, 22, and 24, right? Now this can deal with anything from core systems to comms and data. So it's got a nice breadth of function, right, from a frequency response standpoint. And we had found a lab in D.C. There's like 2 labs, this one and the Navy has one. Became friends with the CEO of the lab, sent our first sample, and we got our test results back, and it was really staggering. It was like, wow, now we're getting some test results where I don't have to like argue with some recording engineer at a cool studio who's looking at everything through an EE model, because there's so much more involved in our electric universe than just electrons, and how signal is moving, and more importantly, how human perception, how we're perceiving things. That's also a big part of our thing there as well. And so now we have the data. It's like, holy cow, that works. So then we came back with a full new suite with a new jacketing material, which is really phenomenal, and part of, I think, our performance, our high performance has also been in the mechanical and thermal practice. So in anywhere in wire, you have basically 3 things to look at: your geometry, the materials you're using, and the build methods. And from that, you want to look at your electrical performance, your mechanical performance, even on stage. If somebody steps on your mic cable and it becomes microphonic, that's mechanical. And or it gets too hot and fuses the conductors together, that's thermal, right?
Yeah.
Now, all of those things are really critical when you're, at 15,000 feet.
Right, flying at Mach 5 or something ridiculous, yeah.
That's it. That was the first kind of beginning on getting a bunch of guys together who knew what they were talking about to figure out what products we wanted to develop, where was there a massive piece in the market that we could insert ourselves into, and those gauges meet 80 to 90% of all requirements in avionics. Low voltage, which is everything we're here in broadcast is low voltage, right? Performance, why so many more things are going wireless. I think there is going to be a heavy, heavy run on copper because of the lithium batteries and the battery leads that are going to need to happen as the world shifts to more and more electrical craft. Right, and so that's massive, one-odd, cable that you're getting to massive amounts of copper to manage the power. And because of that, I think what's going to happen is you're going to see more and more wireless this, wireless that at high frequency, because it's going to be easier to transmit high frequency, hence satellites and all this stuff. You can't move power around the air. So so that's kind of the long and short of how it was. We just were at a gap in our movement in audio, and we needed to pivot, and it happened to be that those guys were in our orbit, and we ended up developing a suite, and the test results were pretty staggering, and that led to what happened a couple of months ago.
Is it the same way for the aerospace guys to be like, oh, you work in music? That's so cool. Is that a...
You're so cool to touch on that, Patrick, and I appreciate it. I really do. At first, I was really paranoid to mix the two. And I think I shared with you the other day. I was like,
oh, baby, it's chocolate and peanut butter here.
That's right. That's right.
It is, right?
Oh, yeah.
Chocolate and peanut butter.
It's Rocky Road.
Yeah.
Well, it's like, 2 great things that go great together. For a long time, though, we were just cautious, because we didn't have anything real. We didn't have any real activity. We didn't have the test results. We didn't have invitations to speak at aviation forums. And it wasn't, and so we wanted to not blur. It was hard enough getting people to, eat the peanut butter alone without introducing anything else. And so we worked really hard to keep the two separated. But by virtue of the real and organic things that have happened in the last 6 months, and now it's authentic. And so, and the guys, my aerospace team would tell me the same thing that you're saying. They're just going, Dariush, it's going to be cool when you show up and you're bringing, John Mayer and all these rock stars to the table that are using your product on other projects. It's cool for them. It feels authentic now, and it doesn't feel forced, and it's real because these things have happened. And so, when I showed up in San Diego, there were a lot of young students, and a few of them there knew that I made records, and they were just like, wow, that's cool. So I think at this point, just kind of letting it happen, and if somebody doesn't get it, fuck them. You know? So,
Yes, fuck them.
I don't know what else to say.
I mean,
Right?
Yeah.
So it is what it is.
Right on.
But I didn't want it to be orchestrated. And he knows my heart. I just need things to happen. And so it's been cool. And it's cool that we're at that time. And again, I thank you because you encourage me to not be timid about the crossover, about sticking the chocolate and the peanut butter, you know, and it is cool. So thanks for encouraging that. I mean it.
let's talk about cables just for a second. What makes Asterope different than the competitors? Because there's so many different cable makers out there that just say, we have the best cable. Well, ours is the best cable. Ours is solderless. Ours isn't, blah, blah, blah. And so, if you were a person that needs a cable to connect your instrument to an amplifier or your console to monitors or whatever, what is different? What's the main thing that people can take away from it?
Well, there's three primary ways you can affect the quality of a cable. One is its geometry. Right? The architecture of the cable itself. Ours is different.
Okay.
Specifically, super high strand. I'll even step back a little bit further. It's a conductive material. Not all copper is created equal.
Right.
As you pointed out.
So you can have dirty copper and cleaner copper.
Dirty copper. What would make dirty copper dirty? What element in there? Do you know?
Lead, maybe?
Lead. Good
Right.
call. It's lead.
Right.
So you're an electron and you're moving down the path and you're feeling cool. And it's like every time you come up to a piece of lead, you got to step around it, arc around it, move around it, right? So a dirty copper infused with a lot of lead is no bueno. There's ways to get the lead out.
Right.
You can get it out by electrolytically bathing it, right? Some people use some other thermal practices that will pull the lead
That's
away.
what I was thinking. Yeah.
So that's what you want. You want super clean copper. We're able to, our original source of copper is the most coveted on the planet. And fortunately, our manufacturing partners have a nice contract for a very long time to make sure we're able to get that copper. So the copper's cleaner. There are many more strands in our conductors. The distance of those conductors from each other is so critical. I mean, it's so critical. It's the pace at which the wind in the copper per foot turns is so critical.
Is more better, or does it need to be more of a languid thing, like a lazy spaghetti wrapped around a pencil kind of thing?
And that would depend on the gauge and the number of strands in the conductors, et cetera. So there are a lot of nuances. It's not like, hey man, can you get some of that 7/8 strand dirty copper and let's make a cable and sell it for $20, you know? Yeah, don't tell music retailers that, because they'll tell you that's how we feed our kids, is by selling lots and lots and lots and lots of cable. Our cables, guys, are sold with a lifetime warranty and a money-back guarantee. And there's not much more we can do to remove the barrier for you to have the opportunity to try it. Go buy one. In 17 years, I've had one returned. And I think because the kid's credit card got tapped or something like that. Wasn't that he didn't want it?
And made in the USA. I think that's such a huge...
It is made, yeah. It's huge for us.
Huge
I appreciate that.
differentiator.
Absolutely it is.
I remember having cables that after maybe 20 times plugging my guitar in, you start to see the copper getting rubbed off of it.
Off
Isn't
the
that crazy?
plating.
You start to see aluminum underneath.
Yeah.
Where only the
Plating.
connector is just a little piece of wire
Yeah.
connected to the cable on the inside. None of it's really, it's just like copper plated or something.
Yeah, no, the connectors are a huge part of it. So the quality of, let's start on the inside. And I'll just say this, we have done everything we possibly can to reduce the noise bed from the inside out of the cable and from end to end.
So you've done one, which was the quality of the cable and the strands, and then what are the other
There are
sort
other
of
dielectric
components?
materials. I mean, I can say this. I know this for a fact. We probably spend more to build a foot of wire than any of our competitors retail theirs for, okay? So because of the quality of the material, right? And it matters, right? You've heard it. It matters, okay?
No.
So that's part of it.
No doubt.
So the quality of the copper, the geometry, fine, high-stranded, dielectric spacer material. You can use cheap dielectric spacer material, or you can use very high quality dielectric spacer material, right? Even the quality
Can you
of the
define that for someone like me?
Yeah, dielectric is just like anything that is going to preserve any crosstalk in an electromagnetic field, right? So it insulation. It insulates,
Got it.
right? So you've got your high stranded copper. You've got a very unique insulation on the conductors that we use, that mauve and sky blue where you see the wire. Very, very unique properties there we're using. Do you know what the number one dielectric is? Come on, Brian. I don't buy that. You
The number
Do
one
you?
plastic?
not
I don't
know?
know.
number one dielectric in the universe.
The number one dielectric in the universe.
That's big.
The number one insulator.
Iron?
The number one dielectric in the universe is air.
That's a trick question.
Isn't that
That is a
cool?
trick
trick
question. I
question.
thought there was going to be no
You
math.
set us
No,
up
well,
for
look
this.
at where water would be highly conductive. Air is the number one dielectric.
Okay.
Right? Isn't that fascinating? So there are things in our coating that make sure that even when the signal's moving through the wire, that the coating itself is a specific material that's getting it to perform better. Then you have dielectric, let's just say spacer tape. And what you want to do is separate those conductors in their form because they're held together just perfectly. And most cables use probably a 60 or 70% spiral shield. Well, every time the shield bends, it's exposing the conductors because the spiral opens up, right?
So let me relay that to guitar players who've probably never heard these words that you just uttered, which is spiral. So imagine you have like a ribbon and you're wrapping it around a tube. Okay, the tube is basically the wire, the copper
two
wire,
conductors, yeah.
right? But you're wrapping it around. Imagine the tube being flexible. So when you are on stage and your cable is bent in any way, whether it's you bending it by tucking it through back your strap and everything else, you're putting a bend in the cable. That little braid of flat ribbon insulator is now being bent, and it opens the cable, the core of the cable, up to having RF frequencies.
Exactly.
Is that right?
It's going to get bathed in RF. That's exactly right.
All right, cool.
We use a 98% cross-braided shield that looks more like a Chinese finger trap.
Right.
So that when you move around, what's it doing? It's just better embracing and holding the integrity of the geometry of the conductors in place, right?
Yeah.
So that's huge.
Yeah,
right?
I'd say.
And so so then we're at our shielding. The last material on our instrument cable would be the jacketing. And so you just want to have like a good high pressurized, we're using a good PVC material that's super dense, still flexible. You want there to be a nice balance between flexibility and that it's supple to the touch, but that it's dense so that if a flight case or a really cool dingo boot, that some cool artist just crushed his thing.
Yeah.
What happens is the shielding gets compromised and dented, and what once was a shield has now become an antenna. Right?
Right.
And then you're going to get microphonics. So that's just in the build of the cable. Now let's move outside of that. What's next? Well, you have connectors, you have barrels, and you have solder. That's all that's left, right?
Yep.
We use what is absolutely the best connector in the world, designed by a brilliant brother, Paul Haas, who developed, his company was G&H, and it is a patented solid core. I thought about having one in my pocket. It's a solid core, say that straight connector right over there. Every other cable out there that's not using this technology, think about that Les Paul and that amp and all that signal and every other cable we played with in our lives before now being reduced to a blob of 10.
Right.
10 before the insulation plate. And then it goes into a piece of plastic. Hey, look at my guitar, man. Check out my guitar, I say, man. You just reduced your signal down to 10. To 10. That connector is a 2-inch copper rod that runs through the insulation plate to the tip of the connector. So we are literally soldering to inside the jack. because that copper rod runs through the insulation plate. That's serious. That connector is a part of our sound, and
Right.
it's a cool part of our sound. Now, every other guitar cable out there, what screws on top of that connector? A barrel.
Yeah.
What's it made out of?
Aluminum.
Or some other
Garbage.
some
Lead.
other high mass,
Yeah.
Cheap
high
pressed
mass.
metal, yeah.
And we talked about what being the best dielectric? Air. Mm-hmm. So when you bring in and introduce anything that's high mass, it's the opposite. You get my point? So high mass is not good around electricity, because of magnetism, and it just gets it to misbehave. But in a guitar barrel on a connector, there's a phenomenon called eddy current or looping,
Right.
where the signal just gets up in there and just like spins off, because of the magnetism, right? And it's just, and what it's doing is it just clips the high frequencies really bad. So, better copper, better geometry, better dielectric material, better material and coverage on the shielding, a better jacketing material, better connectors, non-metallic barrels.
What do you use for those? The barrels?
The barrels are a bit proprietary, but it's a non-metallic material that is solid enough and has the lowest potential
For eddy currents.
for mass and eddy current, right?
Right.
And then the last thing is the solder. And people are like, come on, dude, the solder? I had Larry call me one night. We were talking about Larry Fishman, right? Larry calls me and I say, Dave, I love you. I'm like, I love you too, Larry. He's like, when you told me that the solder you use matters, he said, I love you, but I thought you were crazy. And I said, Larry, man, I'm telling you what, my patriarch shared with me. I won't use any other solder than that. He said, dude, you're right. He said, I can hear a difference in the solder.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, you and Eric Johnson, you guys get it. On that directionality issue, I remember when Eric gave me a hug at NAMM, he said, you were the only guy that ever acknowledged directionality. But the solder matters, and we use an uber pure lead-free silver solder. So again, if tomorrow either one of you are like, Dariush, I heard about this new solder, or I heard about this new material, or I heard about this new geometry, I will listen. And tomorrow, if I find out that there is something I have been remiss in including in our formula and in our build methods, I'll explore it. But right now, I think we have done really everything we can within reason and resource to build the absolute best instrument cable, speaker cable, internal wiring, whatever it is, it's special. And as exhausting as the process of promoting and building and sharing all this is, man, every now and then I'll get an awesome opportunity for an AB session like we got to enjoy over at Ocean Way. Same room Brian and I had gone into when we were showing.
One of the monitor cables, yeah.
Yeah, and so, and you get to hear it, and you get to see other people react, and we call it the wow factor. And I mean, honestly, unless somebody's just super cool, 99 out of 100 people, the minute you plug it in, say, wow. And more than hearing it, the most sophisticated artists I know all say the same. I feel it. You can literally feel it. Now, this is an interesting phenomenon, guys. We all know our ears hear up to 20K-ish, right, before we get into puppy dog frequencies, right?
Yeah.
So there is a study done by Bell Labs that was followed up by major university in Japan. And I mean, this was a 50-year study, guys, on human perception. And what they learned is that there is a phenomenon called hypersonics, or psychoacoustics. And what they proved is that even though mechanically our ears are hearing to about 20K, that our minds can perceive harmonics over 400K. That's amazing. This is stuff that's like hardwired into us genetically and physiologically from eons ago, probably as a survival technique, so you could feel the bear step on a twig a quarter mile away, right? Even though your ears wouldn't hear it. So a lot of other ways that frequencies get into our body and our minds process it. Could be our mouth, vibrations in our chest. And so when you are getting all the mud out of the way and you're really preserving the integrity of that data pack, you feel it. And because the reproduced or amplified sound is in phase. It has not been corrupted. It is not distorted. It's clean and it's there. And when it propagates in the room in phase, electromagnetically being made out of water, we're, and responding electromagnetically, we become really as one with the current and the frequency and the phase. And as esoteric as that sounds, Asterope just helps you raise your frequency, and hopefully feel closer to your music and more connected. And it's a fun ride, and I'm interested to see when you guys are going to start buying some.
So that's what I was going to ask you, Dariush, is so where can people find you?
Well, they can find us at asterope.com. We have some other partners out there. If you have a preferred, big box dealer, go see them. But if not, we'd love you to come to asterope.com, and we can answer any questions you have and meet all of your signal management solutions. And we'd be happy to help. I sure appreciate the opportunity.
Right on. Well, I really appreciate your time, and thank you for coming on the show.
Yeah, man.
Very
Absolutely.
entertaining, very educational.
Oh, my brothers.
There's so much more to learn. I think it was only a couple of months ago where I even knew that cables made a difference. So, and it's made such a difference to me. So thanks again for your time, Brian.
Yeah, I think so too. Yeah, I would just say I just encourage people to just go experience it for yourself. Everybody can talk a good game and say what it means to them and how it changed their lives, and sent shivers up their spine and the whole thing. But if you just experience it for yourself, then you can make a really informed decision. I'm always a big fan of that.
Yeah. So again, asterope.com, Guitar Center, Sweetwater, Custom House. But check out the website. That'll really give you an idea of what it looks like. So feel free to like, comment, subscribe, check out our previous episodes. We got some really cool stuff out there so far.
Yeah.
And appreciate everybody listening, tuning in. Earworm out.
Earworm out.
Sweet signal, smooth signal, 2-inch copper rods, cross-braided, educated.